I can't get out.
I think that's better now. Can you hear
Okay.
me okay now?
I can hear you okay.
You can hear me good?
I can hear you well, yes.
Okay, cool. I can't see you, but I
I don't
see
know
that
where
you're on.
I don't know where my camera is. I don't see it anywhere.
Oh, you mean, are you on your
Oh,
phone or
there we
your
go.
laptop? There you are.
Can you see me? All right. All right.
Yes.
All right.
Hey, top of
Wow.
the morning.
Top of the morning
We had
view
a
as
few
well.
we had a few technical difficulties, didn't we?
Yeah, that's all right. That's what it's all about, right? Solving technical difficulties.
Yes. Hey, Scott, thanks for joining me and thanks for doing this. Just as a matter of like introductions, I'm Tim Engel. I'm working with Dr. Shukla at the Chapman University, and this is part of the Manu Shah grant. And what we're doing is we're talking with various people in aerospace and manufacturing supply chain who've had good careers. And Sometimes they go out their whole career in aerospace. Sometimes people get into other things, which is one of the things that you've done. I mean, that you're a good example of that. Um, but Scott and I worked together in aerospace at McDonnell Douglas and Boeing. We worked on a couple of different programs, I believe, and I don't want to step on his toes and get off into his rice bowl, as it were, his bailiwick. So I'll leave that up to him. But so I'm going to ask a series of questions. And Scott, I know you're going to be able to talk about your career. There's no big time limit. I think we got about an hour or 45 minutes, whatever it takes, whatever we end up using. And Scott's graciously agreed to share his time, his career, and this is going to be used for kids in colleges, primarily initially at least Chapman, and then possibly other universities, and also with the Society of Manufacturing Engineering on their website, and shared with various colleges. One is Cal Poly San Luis Obispo, and then other various colleges and high schools. So enough of me. We'll start with Scott. Well, I'm going to ask him the first question, and then along the way too, Scott, you can embellish and add to. But my first question for you is, why did you decide on a career in aerospace operations and supply chain and manufacturing? And you can also give a little brief intro about yourself as well.
Well, okay. Well, I spent 15 years in aerospace at McDonnell Douglas and then with Pratt and Whitney. I got into the business because it was cool. I mean, when I got out of college, I majored in political science in college, so I figured I would go to law school, but I wasn't that good of a student to do that. So I got a job and I grew up in the East Coast, and I really wanted to go to California, and McDonnell Douglas was willing to hire me and move me out to the West Coast. So I did that. So that's why I chose it, is because I mean the product is so cool. I mean there was no rivalry of anybody I graduated from college who had a cooler product than what we had.
Right. Now, were you going to Purdue or one of
I
those
went to the
schools? Or...
University of Dayton in Dayton, Ohio.
Oh, okay. And
I wasn't one of those caps who came from one of those fancy supply chain schools. I had to learn it all on my own.
right. Yeah. So yeah, you and I were familiar with. There were some young men and women who were picked up and out of college, and they were brought out here, and they were sort of knighted right out of school,
Yeah,
and they got to go
exactly.
on rotation programs and so forth. And
Right.
uh,
But thank God you and
no,
I were smarter than them.
yes.
We had to
Yeah.
train them to do what to be our bosses, I guess.
Yes. I felt the same way as you. I used to go out on the floor and see the airplane and think how I was really thankful because, I knew there were careers in information technology, selling insurance, work in groceries, you name it, right? And some of those are can be very good careers and very lucrative. But
Right.
we got to build something which was to me was amazing.
Right.
The second question I have for you, Scott, is how did you prepare for this career? You know, what was your journey?
Actually, my preparation right out of school. With this is really kind of a funny story. Is right out of school, I got a job as a employment counselor, or an employment, what do you call it, employment service. And I saw a job
Yes,
selling iron or steel and aluminum. So I placed myself in that job. So I got a commission for placing myself in the job, and got the job in aluminum and steel sales for the Earl M. Jurgensen company. And
oh really?
yeah, so when McDonnell Douglas was doing interviews on campus, I got an interview with Bill Powell. I don't know if you remember Bill Powell, but I got an interview with him in raw materials, and they flew me out to the West Coast for an interview, and they hired me to work in raw materials. So that
That's
was my
amazing.
that was the bulk of my preparation: college degree, selling steel and aluminum, work for McDonnell Douglas in raw materials.
That's pretty amazing because I remember when I lived in Linwood, there was an Earl M. Jorgensen steel company nearby. I don't know if it was over on Alameda
Yeah, it was on
or what's
Alameda.
more.
That was the national headquarters. That was the
Oh,
mecca.
oh, okay. See,
Yeah.
I knew we were connected in more ways than one.
There you go. There you go.
Recently I was watching a little bit of the Masters, and I know Rory took that, right. He won,
Yes.
kind of, yeah. And I thought about our times where we went out to the Nissan Open and
Yeah.
at Riviera Country Club and got to see all the celebrities. We went there
Uh,
for a number of years. I think we went out of there about 5 years or so.
Yeah, I really enjoyed that. I miss those times going out there. They don't really have that pro am kind of thing anymore. Tiger Woods is taking that tournament over. So I remember Rick Dees handing out the $100 bills.
Yes, yes.
Yeah.
I didn't quite get one, but I was trying to,
Yeah.
because back then that was a lot of money.
Yeah. We
Let's see.
saw.
Next question. Go ahead.
Go
I'm
ahead.
sorry.
No, go ahead.
Oh, next question I had was, how did you find the job or get the job? And you may have already touched on that. I don't know why I'm not hearing your audio.
Right. Can you hear me now?
Yeah, I can hear you now. Yep.
Okay, so as you well know from working there for as many years, that everybody who worked there knew somebody, right? So that
Yes.
that was
Yes.
that was the and so I had some friends who got jobs right out, engineers friends who got jobs right out of college with McDonnell Douglas. They recruited heavily in the Midwest, and so one of my friends helped me get my resume to the right place. So that and like I said, just about everybody I knew there knew somebody before they came. So it was a highly nepotistic society,
Yeah.
and I don't
Well,
say that in a bad way. I don't say that in a bad way. I think that for McDonnell Douglas it worked.
yeah. Well, it's like networking. I recently visited Cal Poly San Luis Obispo and got to go through their labs and where they do manufacturing and additive manufacturing and 3D printing and all that. And the kids are amazing. And when I say kids, I mean that affectionately, not in a bad
Yeah,
way, but
yeah, yeah, yeah. I know.
they're great. They network. They're in societies like Society of Manufacturing Engineering. They talk to each other. They communicate. They share. They show other people what they're doing. And
Yeah, yeah.
typically for them, like when they're ready to graduate, they've got a couple job offers.
Right. They can network a lot more easily than we could. I mean, I mean, we didn't have computers, we didn't have cell phones. I mean, we had to do it. You know, type out a resume on a typewriter and then send them out. So it was really hard to apply for jobs in those days.
Yes, yes, it was. It was a different world, but we
Yeah.
survived.
Yeah, yeah,
And
well, yeah, because we we were doing it the highest tech way possible. with a
Yeah.
typewriter and some whiteout and that kind of thing.
Yeah. Well, one time, real quick, short story. One time I was looking for a job, as we often were, every 5 or 8 years or whatever. But I was looking for a job, and I left my resume on this desk, and she was the secretary of the director. And so she opened the envelope and she pulled my resume out, and she said, "Oh my goodness." And I thought, well, why did you say, "Oh my goodness"? She goes, my brother used to own your house. She goes, I was married at your house. She goes, you have a side yard. You have a like a side yard with grass and pergola and all this stuff. And I was married right out there. I go, no kidding. And so, long story short, I ended up getting that job. But what a coincidence, huh?
Yeah, there you go. A good network. Yeah, give this guy's part of my network now. That's good.
Yes, yes. Scott, the next question I have, and I know you've had a good long career just as I have, and yours wasn't all aerospace, and you're welcome to talk to him about that as well, and that's also a very interesting part of your career, but get working for the government and process improvement and that kind of thing, efficiency. But my next question is lessons learned along the way. Um, what were some of the lessons you learned along the way? Some of the highlights and
I think that the major lesson, and I've tried to pass that on to my kids, and it's become kind of a theme around our house. I think the biggest lesson that you can learn in your career and in your life is to pay attention. And I think paying attention is the only thing. I mean, if you don't pay attention, I don't know how many times you've been in a meeting where you stop paying attention and you go out and there's action items and you wonder what the heck you got out of that meeting. So I think the real key is understand what's going on around you and pay attention to the temperature in the room and pay attention to the temperature of what's going on so that you understand uh, how to prioritize what work you have to do, because there's no way anybody in manufacturing or even in any business can get all the work done they have to get done all at the same time. So you have to learn to pay attention, prioritize, and do the stuff that's important first and get the other stuff later. So I think
yeah,
to me that's the biggest lesson learned, and just like you said too, networking is important. I mean, if you are kind and responsive to everybody you come in contact with, you'll be a lot more. I mean, people will do business with people they like before they'll do business with people they don't like. So you kind of try to be the guy that they like, right?
yes, yes, and you never know where you're going to meet somebody who might be a good contact or a good network for a career, right?
Exactly. You never know where that's coming from. As long as you're, I mean, if people say, yeah, I met that guy and he's a jerk, you'll never get anywhere. But if they say, yeah, I knew that guy, he's a good guy. We should talk to him. We should hire him, or we should bring him in, or whatever the case may be.
That's excellent advice because after you moved on, I believe we had the opportunity to take some Dale Carnegie training, and one of the things that in Dale Carnegie training that we learned was, you want to give other people a good reputation, and they said a fine reputation. Give the other person a fine reputation to live up to. So in other words, don't look at everybody as an enemy or a potential enemy. Look at them as a good friend, a good ally, a good coworker, a good network, and think of them in good ways. Give them a good reputation to live up to. I think that was pretty good advice.
Yeah, I really think that is good advice.
Yeah. Now, along those same lines, um, I know you worked in aerospace and manufacturing, but you also worked in uh, government efficiency and so forth. Um, why did you find these choices of careers satisfying?
Well, I think that in aerospace, what in the early '80s and mid '80s, everything was done by the sweat of the brow, right? It was you worked as hard as you could to get stuff done, right? And so you were forced, and as I grew through my career, I especially when I I guess it was like but I left McDonnell Douglas in like 1994 from St. Louis, and I went to a facility for Pratt and Whitney in San Antonio, and we set up a facility there, and from the best of what we knew, we did the stuff the right way, and the corporation wanted us to put another product line in our factory, and I told them that I was the operations manager, so I told them, well, I'll start looking for another factory, and they said, no, you'll do it there. And so I learned the lean and lean concepts from that. So the difference between waste and the difference between value added and waste, and how to stream, and we actually set that factory up really well, and started to become really productive, and that always stuck with me, that technique, those techniques. So I use those techniques throughout my career, and I was able to turn it into a business. And so I had my own business doing that kind of consulting in aerospace and in other parts of business, and it led to a meeting, or a meeting with an alumni of the University of Dayton, but somebody who was uh, doing lean as well, and she wrote a book about lean. Actually, she wrote a book called Lean for Dummies. So in the for dummies, uh, whatever you call it, in the for dummies product line, and that book was read by the governor of Arizona, and I was brought in to work for the governor and the governor of Arizona to do it in government work, and so I've been doing that for. It was easier than traveling around trying to find clients, so I did that for the state of Arizona for 10, 12 years, I guess, and now I do it for a city in Arizona, and I'm going to retire in the end of June, but I've been doing it there as well. So I learned that technique of finding out the value added versus non-value added, and I became pretty good at it, and so I did it for a long time, and that has stuck with me and proved to be a good skill to have.
That's great. I mean, we kind of got into it at Boeing shortly after you left, I believe it was, and we had lean. Well, they had different things. They had design for manufacturing and assembly, various lean sort of initiatives, but then they sort of put it under an umbrella of lean. And within that, I got into continuous improvement, which is sort of
Right,
like the Toyota model. And
right.
it was sort of intimidating to me at first. And because I got somebody recruited me, they came to me, they said, hey, we want you to do this thing, but it's going to be like a side job. You're going to still be a senior manager running quality, but at the same time, we want you to do this thing. And I was like, oh boy, okay. And then I I did it, but I got a team of people to work with me because alone I wouldn't have been able to do it. And so that teaches you teamwork too, doesn't it? It
It
teaches you to
teaches
work
teamwork.
as a team.
One of the things that I learned from it immediately in the first go round at Pratt Whitney in the '90s. The thing that I learned is the people closest to the work understand the work a lot more than you do.
Yes,
And
yes.
I got slapped in the face with that during the during our lean adventure at Pratt Whitney, when one of my employees uh, put together a technique that saved like an hour or hour and a half of processing time, and I said, man, why didn't you tell me about this earlier? This is really great. And he said, I told you about this like 4 months ago, and you never listened. I'm there. Wow. So that kind of that kind of thing of if you're a leader, you need to be listening to your people. You need to be out, and I find it's difficult, but as a leader, you need to be out and about, and not you shouldn't be working. You should be leading. It's different. I mean, if you're piled up with tasks on your desk, I don't think you're doing it the right way.
Yeah, no kidding. And what you hit on there too is how important it is to stay humble. We sometimes we get into leadership positions and we think, well, gosh, we must be the smartest. We're in
Right.
charge. We've got all these years. We've got accolades and trophies and things hanging on the wall. I got my master's degree or whatever. But again, like you said, the guy
Yeah.
or gal that's on the floor doing the job probably has best insight. And
Well,
and and,
without a
and as
doubt,
you said,
they're fighting it every day. And they know where the problems are. You have to build the relationship where they can tell you that there's problems, because if they don't tell you and they just hide them, then it's it's a long way to go. When
yes,
when
and in the
when
long
I
and in the long run, go ahead.
when I was at Dell actually had a program where if you made a mistake, and it became a chronic mistake, and you went and told somebody about it, and they fixed it, you got an award, you got shares of stock, you got dinner certificates, movie certificates, you got a whole bunch of stuff to elevate problems, because if you don't know where the problems are, you don't know how, you can't solve them. So the employees can't be afraid to say, hey, there's a problem here. It's about the work process and not about the worker.
Yes, and it's good for everybody if somebody comes forward. I mean, it's like there's this community, right? I mean, the whole company
Yeah, it's
improves
got
when one
it,
person.
it's got to be accepted by the CEO, and uh, the my motto always was that middle management is where all initiatives go to die, and so you got to break through the middle management barrier, because they're the guys that, and in government, we call them the weebies, because we be here longer than you will be here. I mean, the people that have been there a long time, and have made their reputation and made their money on the fact that they're the middle manager, and they know what's going on here. And uh and a lot of times they don't. A lot of times that they don't allow their employees to tell them where the issues are. So you have to be able to break through that barrier and say, hey, listen, we're going to listen to the people doing the work, because they know what's going on.
Yeah, yeah, that's very true. So
Yeah.
true. Yeah. Hey, let's see. Next question I got for you. Can you hit on some achievements and or highlights of your career? And I know, like, just like for me, memory was, and we were both pretty young then. I mean, you had already gotten into middle management, and you were a pretty young guy at the time. So
Yeah.
I mean, that's one that just comes off the top of my head. But I know you've had a varied career. A lot of different things and different companies. So yeah, just maybe some achievements and or highlights.
I think, as I go through it, I mean, just being able, I got laid off twice in one day in 1982 at McDonnell Douglas, and was able to find a third job. So that was an achievement in itself, is that somebody noticed that I could do good work, and they were eliminating different positions. But by 2 o'clock in the afternoon, I had my third job of the day. So that
Now, was that due to TQMS or something, or what was
it
going
was
on
not.
there?
If you remember in '82, it was the B-1 bomber, and everybody, McDonnell Douglas having no orders, so they laid off. I mean, I think we were like 45,000 people at the time, and we had no, so we could have gone right over I mean, right across the street from Building 200 was, Rockwell put in their purchasing department, so we could have gone. I got an offer to go work for them, but I didn't want to do that. But so I stuck with my job in Building 200. So it was not a TQMS thing. It was just a downturn in the economy.
Right, right.
And then I left to go to Washington D.C. My wife had graduated from, or she was my girlfriend at the time, but she's my wife now. But she had graduated from college and took a job in D.C. doing association work. So, yeah, basically lobbying work. and I got a job with a company that was a contractor to the United States Navy, and I was doing uh, fast attack submarine fire control center scheduling. So at the age of 25, I was the only person in the country who knew where every single one of our fast attack nuclear submarines were. So I had to have a top
Wow.
secret. I had to have a top secret clearance for that. So what came out of that, which was interesting, is that one day I walked into my office space, and there was a stack of 5 or 6 IBM boxes, and I said, "What are those?" And my boss said, "Those are what I think they call them personal computers." I said, "Personal computers? What can we do with what are we doing with those?" And he goes, "I don't know. Nobody told us. They just showed up, right?" So I said, "Well, let me see what they do." So I took one and I couldn't make it work, but we had a room full of we did a lot of the Navy's typing for them, letters and contracts and that kind of stuff. So we had a room full of people who were on keyboards on computers in a system called Wang. It was a word processing system. So
Yes.
I went down there and told them, I want your best person. And they said, "Oh, well, this is this lady, Michelle." And I said, "Okay." So I took Michelle, gave her the PC. I said, "Make this work." And so she did. And we were able to automate the fire control hardware scheduling plan,
Wow.
which was a top secret document, but it was then automated, and so we it was so much easier. It cut like 7 hours a day out of my job. I have an 8 hour day job. I have it. I was able to take that around and show the Navy, and that became the standard for the fire control system. So that was pretty interesting to be able to do that. Uh, and then let's see. Well, this is not this is a wife career highlight, but it was really a career highlight. Is that my the association my wife worked for bought tickets to the inaugural gala for Ronald Reagan in 1980 after the 1984 elections. It was 1980 January of '85, and that inauguration was so cold that nobody in her office wanted to go, and so these tickets were $15,000 a piece.
Oh my
And
gosh.
so us two youngsters went down. And so we were sitting in the front row, 2 boxes over from the Reagans, watching this inaugural gala,
Oh my gosh.
which included a performance by Frank Sinatra.
Wow.
And
So you got to go.
yeah, so we went because it was so
Well, that's
cold, nobody else
amazing.
wanted to go. And we were young, we didn't care. It was fun. And at the end of it, which was most interesting, is that Ronald Reagan had all his buddies go around and shake hands with everybody sitting in the front row because they were the biggest donors. Right. We shook hands with Selleck and what's his name, the guy who was in charge of the NRA, Chuck Heston, big Chuck Heston. So I got to shake hands with Moses. So that was a career highlight.
Yeah, I guess.
Uh,
Set my people free.
yes. So I got to shake hands with Moses and Tom Selleck, and Sinatra didn't come. I would have loved to shake hands with Sinatra because that made me a made man. Everybody would be afraid of me. So so
That's
that
amazing.
that was kind of a highlight from my perspective. So, and then I got to
That's cool.
travel around with one of their lobbyists because he wasn't sure who people were, and I knew who everybody was. So, that was a lot of fun. So that, and then yeah, went to McDonnell Douglas, got put in charge of the T-45, all the scheduling for the T-45, and then I went over to product support. They moved me to St. Louis to build a T-45 in St. Louis, and then um, I won they sent me over to the Harrier program for because their repair of repairables organization was a mess, and they thought maybe I could straighten it out. So I went over there, and then Desert Storm started. We had planes sent to Desert Storm and that kind of thing. So uh, during that process, I had helped enough to clean the place up. Listen to my employees, obviously, the people who are doing the work and everything. And we were given the Salty Dog Award by the Navy as the best naval support unit in contractor in the nation. So we won the big Salty Dog Trophy.
That's outstanding.
Yeah, they were some highlights of a career. Being appointed by the governor of Arizona to do process improvement work, working directly for the governor was an accomplishment as well. So, and being able to be out on my own for 8 years, I think that was an accomplishment. Doing lean consulting for 8 years on my own. So, I don't know how else I'll blow my horn, but that's it.
Well, I've got to ask this question. You were a guest speaker when I was teaching operations management at Cal State Long Beach. You came and did a little guest uh, speaking, I think for an hour or so as a consultant. And one of the students was a smart person. They said, What's the next big thing?" And you had the insight and the wisdom and the I don't know what it was, but you said our phones are going to become smartphones. We're going to be doing all kinds of things on these things, and so can you just touch on that for a second, and maybe also talk about what you think is next beyond that?
That to me was like instinctive. It was like as phones got better and better, people started using them for more than what the phone was, and I could just see that coming, that they were going to start making, because I worked at Dell long enough to see how technology just kept moving on and kept moving on and kept moving on, and uh,
Yeah.
and so I the phone is what I saw as because the phone kept changing as fast as computers are changing and everything else. And now I heard a comedian say the other day, which I think is great, is that the telephone is just a rarely used app now on our phones.
Yeah,
Yeah, so
yeah,
so
that's
uh, so I think that the phone is now a camera and the phone is a video recorder, and for right now the big thing to me is people are going into career, or it seems to be an easy career of being uh media influencers, Facebook influencers, whatever you call those things. And I think that's going to swell for a while, is because it's easy work, and if you can, I mean, but to me it seems like it's as successful as being a professional athlete. I mean, there's only going to be a few people who are going to be able to make a living out of it, but I think that's the trend to where people are going, is to being social media influencers, and there's a lot of that going on. So the phones are going to keep getting bigger and bigger. But the other thing too is driving your car. Your cars almost drive themselves now. The technology in automobile with the cameras and the warnings and I think there are cars out there now that can actually drive themselves. You can just sit back and the car will drive itself. So the car. I think car technology is probably the next. They're going to make the cars into to the phones that we have. So
yeah.
that'd be my guess.
I think you're probably right. I worked with a guy who he was real happy with his Tesla, and he worked in Long Beach with us on the C-17 support, but he lived in Irvine, and he get on the freeway, the San Diego freeway in Irvine, and he would set the auto drive and all the way to Long Beach, whatever that is, 30 miles or whatever,
Right.
was all on automated. And he
Wow.
said the next step was he was going to get a software upgrade where he could get to work, the park his car, and then he'd put it on taxi mode, and the car would go to work, and it would go pick up people and deliver wherever they're going, and it would make money all day. You know, isn't that amazing?
I mean, we have in Phoenix, we have Waymo, which is a self-driving taxi service that cars that drive themselves. So we have that. That all that it's obviously AI is where it's coming from, right? So your car's going to be smarter than you, and your computer is going to be smarter than you, you know, the computers are just going to eventually what you see is from those old science fiction movies that the computers are going to take over the world and we're going to be slaves to the computers.
Yeah, I hate to even entertain that idea. I worked. There was a guy. There was a guy my age. We went to high school together for a while, but he moved on before we graduated. But anyway, long story short, he got an IT degree at UC Irvine, and then one of his career things was working at JPL for many years. And he said he helped develop AI, parts of AI,
Yeah.
and so I asked him point blank. I said, "So are there killer robots in our near future?" And he said, "No, not in the near future. Maybe years and years in the future, but he said not in the near future." And a little bit I know about AI is, and you probably know more than me because you worked in IT, is that the improvements and the learning is so rapid, right?
Right.
Like
Right.
you teach a computer with AI how to play chess, and within like an hour it can beat anybody, right?
Right. Right. So
So it's kind of scary that way.
well, you
Okay,
think of now the military drones are almost killer robots, right? I mean, you don't need fighter
yeah,
pilots. You tell the drone where to drop their bombs, and they go. They drop the bombs and come back. And even if they get
yeah,
shot down, nobody cares because they're worth a fraction of what a fighter jet costs.
yeah. You now I know you knew that Boeing had a presence in Huntington Beach. I got to work there for 2 years um, in the mid well in 2015 to 2017,
Uh-huh.
and they build right there in Huntington Beach. They build these autonomous submarines, and 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 when they say, and I didn't really understand that. I thought, well, there's somebody sitting in a room in a basement in Illinois, driving these things or whatever. But they're all programmed, so they program them to do what they need to do, whether it's go and deliver a weapon or do reconnaissance or whatever, and it gives them all the programming to do the whole operation. Like
Wow.
it can avoid enemies, avoid obstructions or things in the way, mountains
Right.
or
Right.
fish or whales or
Well,
whatever.
you know where they got that technology from, right? Roomba.
Is that right?
Oh, sure. I mean, Roomba was designed to do that very thing, except around your house, right?
Yeah.
So
So
that
it's the
they
same
take
technology, right?
yeah, they say same technology. Say, okay, now you learn the ocean floor, and now you can go and avoid obstacles and just do what you have to do. I mean,
Yes. Yes.
a company just opened up here in Arizona that does, has a pool cleaner for that like a Roomba. So you just buy it and you put it in your pool, and it just learns to contour your pool, and it cleans your pool.
Well, that's amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah. I remember. I didn't think much of the technology. I thought it was just a bunch of junk, and my wife was persistent, and this is 7 8 years ago or whatever, maybe about that time, and we end up getting one, and man, that thing is amazing. It's still going strong.
Yeah, yeah,
The Roomba.
there's a lot of smart people out there. I always wish that I was one of them, but you know, when I look back on my life, you know what I wish I invented? The little
Oh,
cardboard piece that they slip over uh, Starbucks coffee cups.
oh my gosh! Right?
There's all kinds of money in that, and you being in quality know how difficult quality is for a product, and you wouldn't have to do any quality of that. And who cares how its size and its dimensions, as long as it fits around the cup, it's good stuff.
Right. Right. Yep.
What
Absolutely.
when in doubt, ship it out.
So, Scott, I think I'm down to my last question for you. And the last question is recommendations. So, for college students, for early career individuals, or it could be middle career, but people that are going to school, people that are learning, people that are interested in a career or a potential career in manufacturing operations, supply chain, that kind of thing. What are your what are some recommendations you could give?
I think rudimentally you should practice whatever it takes to solve problems. Problem solving is what everybody in the world needs right now, and it's where people are making money. In order to be a good uh, a good employee, problem solving is the key. So I mean, if it means majoring in mathematics, or whether it means doing crossword puzzles or Sudoku puzzles, or whatever it is, problem solving is, and by I mean problem solving, I'm talking about really intense. Being able to design a problem statement, being able to decide what is actually causing the problem, what is the root cause of the problem, and how do we go about solving that problem, or slowly getting to resolution of it. So I think that anything you do in your career as a college student, as a citizen, honing those problem solving skills and being confident in those skills is I think what the world's looking for right now.
Right, right. I think you're right. I think about some of the best advice I had early on was well, a couple things. Be willing to work. Be willing to get
Right.
in there and then you got to show up. You got to be there on time. Be ready and have the right attitude and stay hungry and humble.
I think staying humble and building relationships is a good thing. I mean, uh, if you don't have relationships and people don't have confidence in you, no matter what problem you solve, they're not going to take your advice, right? So it's a matter of like you said, building relationships, being comfortable with people, understand, and listening is another. That's the best way to solve problems, is just to listen. Listen to and you're not better than anybody. What you are, you're just learning. So always be a learner.
Yeah, I think that's excellent advice.
Yeah.
I, I
One of the things that as I was hiring lean people and that kind of stuff, anybody who put on their resume that they were a lean expert, I just threw their resume away. I don't want experts. I want people who are practitioners and are constantly learning and can learn from everything. If you make yourself an expert, that means you stop learning.
Right, right. And then I think if you do that, if you take that attitude, then life gets boring, right? There's
And
always something to learn from. I've done about 25 of these, and I'm always amazed at every one. Some people just it was really kind of cookie cutter, but most of them are a lot of variety. Everybody had a different journey, right? I mean, there's a
yeah.
lot to be learned from every person, I think.
I think one of the things that I've always admired about you and your career is that you were a great relationship builder. You understood people, you understood what they do, you understood their pain, and you understood, so you knew a whole variety of people. So but when you do that, it's a lot easier to get stuff done. The people do you a favor if you need them to do it, even outside your organization. But if you know those people, you go, oh yeah, I know you, yeah, I'll do that for you, or something, whatever you need done. So being a relationship builder I think is really key.
Well, thanks, Scott. Thanks for that compliment. And right back to you. I remember when you and I would walk through the factory, and that was back when there were like 40, 50,000 people. If I didn't know somebody, you did.
Yeah. I was just
So I
telling
think we
somebody
were
that
we were
I was just telling that to somebody the other day, is that we would go through there and like, but you knew way more people than I do. You had been there for more years than me, but it was, hey, how you doing? Hey, how you doing? We go to
Who's this
Torrance, or
guy? Tim, you're okay. Who's this guy?
yeah, we go to Torrance, or we go to Northern Virginia, or we go to Long Beach. But yeah, you, Kim knew somebody everywhere, so that was good stuff.
Well, thank you, Scott. Thanks for the compliment. It was always a pleasure working for you. A lot of our relationship, or when we met and so forth, was when I worked for you. I think I was a manager or a scheduler, or I can't remember exactly.
You
I
were
think I was a
certainly a
manager,
man.
and you were a senior manager.
Yeah, you managed the all the scheduling people, so you certainly were a manager.
Right. And then I think you were a senior manager at the time.
Yeah, yeah, whatever it was, I was. I don't even remember. A business unit manager, I guess.
Yeah, that's what they called them.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And John
yeah,
Landers reported to me as well.
yes. And John he was an interesting guy. I think I know he was a manager at one time, and I don't know if he made senior manager, but uh, he's one of the guys that made the trip to St. Louis, and we went over to his house. One of my coworkers and I went over to his house for dinner when we were out there in St. Louis visiting. And I think he made the move with the T-45 when that program was moved out there.
Yeah, because he was not a Ken Williams was not a fan of his. That's how he got put. How he got put on my organizational chart because what was his name? Lauren, the CFO of the T-45, Lauren,
Lauren
whatever.
Fry.
Yeah, he was trying to
Yes.
hide. He was trying to hide John because John was a good head, but somehow or another he got sideways with Ken Williams. So
Yeah,
that
and
that
Ken was at that time, Ken was a very powerful man.
yeah, I think they put TQM in because they want to tone him down a little bit.
Like push some of that power down a little bit.
Yeah, yeah, and we always use that as a weapon. Then was if somebody came and yelled at you, you say that's not very TQM.
Yeah. Hey,
they were
Scott,
some that.
you
Go ahead.
go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, go ahead.
Well, I was going to say, you're a pretty humble guy. You didn't talk about you kind of made it into the pros in baseball, didn't you?
Yeah, for a year I played a little minor league baseball. Yeah, but that had
Yeah.
absolutely nothing to do with my career in aerospace, but my real career. That was just a teenage boy, little joy route for a bit.
But what's really cool about it is that you've got some youngsters in your life that are involved in the sport, right?
Yeah, yeah. Both my sons are work for professional baseball teams, so they made they made their life out of it. You know, I sometimes I know this is a manufacturing thing, but I sometimes I wish I had pursued that because it seems like it's a whole lot of fun. But
Yeah, yeah,
and that really is a relationship building business. I mean, it is not what you know, but it's who you know in that business because there's so few jobs and so many people that want them.
yes,
So
yes,
I'm very proud of what they've done not just stay in it, but keep advancing in it, which is really really impressive to me how they've advanced.
yes, yeah. Well,
So
that's fantastic.
thank you for bringing it up. That's a softball. Those guys are the older son just moved back here from Pittsburgh to take a senior director job with the Diamondbacks. So that's really cool.
Yeah, that's outstanding. That's a
Yeah. So
testament to you
I'm
and
hope
your wife's parenting skills too.
I'm hoping that when I retire at the end of June that he can get me a job as an usher at the stadium.
Yeah, when I was a kid, I had a good friend. In fact, he's the professor that works at Chapman. He was helping me get my life in order back then, and he had a job, and he said, "Hey, you could come work at the Dodger Stadium. Put on a blue blazer and one of those nice hats, and be an usher or crowd management." And they had job openings at the Forum back then when the Who and you name it was going through there. And
Yeah. Yeah.
but the main ones I took were like jobs we were going to Compton College, and I took jobs in the library and also doing registration. So it's
Yeah.
a way to make a little money.
Yeah. And you save money on gas, not have to go drive to Dodger Stadium every day.
Yeah, yeah. Well, Scott, this has been amazing. I really appreciate you sharing your journey, and I knew a lot of it, but some of it I didn't know, and I appreciate you taking the time to share. And what I'll do after this, I'll be. It takes a while to process, but then a file will be created with the recording, and so I'll send you a copy, and then I'll probably be posting it on the Society of Manufacturing Engineering website. I'm going to share it. I'll give it to Dr. Shukla at Chapman University, and then probably also on YouTube. But when I do that, I'll share it with you. I'll
All
tell
right.
you what's going on.
Sounds great. If you need any more, let me know.
Okay. Yeah. Well, there's always a chance for follow up because I know that we kind of touched the surface.
Yeah.
But we got to get a good variety of things. And thank you so much for sharing taking the time to share.
I can share the making charts with tape and little knives, before there was computers. So that was one of my jobs. So yeah, and get your butt out here so we can do a Higley hot dogs and I'll get you VIP treatment at the ballpark.
Yeah. And I'm trying to remember the name of that donut place out there too. There's is it Bosa?
Bosa, yeah. Yep.
Yeah, I've heard of it. They're really good too, right?
Yeah, there's one right across the street from my house.
Super. Okay. Yeah, I'm looking forward to it.
Speaking of that, do you remember the T-45 when they moved it to Palmdale?
Yes.
And we were in procurement reform, so we had to take the AFPRO or DPRO guys through the jigs so we get our progress payments. We had to do that once a month. Yes. And so we would have to drive to Palmdale and meet them because we weren't allowed to give them a ride. Do you remember that?
Yes, I do.
And we had those black silk jackets.
Yes.
The T-45 jacket. So we picked up wind chills to meet those guys at before we went in. And the thing that reminds me the most is that we went in there one morning and the donut guy was wiping the counter with a wet rag. And he asked us if we were there for the B2 high-speed taxi. And we all looked shocked because the B2 was a black program. Nobody knew anything about it. And this guy, the Winchell's donut guy, knew that they were doing a high-speed taxi that day at like 11:15 or something. And I tell that story a lot because it just was so weird that the engineers must have got in there, the bosses in the start of the day and talked about stuff like that. And this donut guy knew more than obviously we were in aerospace for years, right? And we actually had people working on B2 quietly and signing travel orders that we had no idea where they were going and stuff like that. And this donut guy knew.
That's amazing.
That always struck me as like, what the heck? But we looked very cool in our tour jackets, though. We were pretty cool.
Yeah, those for the time, those jackets were very cool.
They were. I mean, that was one of the nice perks of working at McDonnell Douglas. And also the other thing that I remember most about that was the management clubs with Jack Jackson, the American Airlines training pilot.
Oh yes.
And he was hysterical. So a lot of his stories I remember. So anyway, you have a great day.
You too, Scott. Thank you again so much.
Thank you for inviting me to do this. I enjoyed it.
Yes, sir. Me too. We'll have to do it again, and I'll come out to Arizona soon.
Okay. Get here. Talk to you soon.
Will do. Thank you, Scott.
Bye.
Bye.